out to Socrates. Socrates still trying to get the opening. Oh, Socrates! Whoa!
And there it is. The crazy gang have beaten the Culture Club.
Maggie Thatcher, can you hear me? Maggie Thatcher, your boys took the hell of a beating. Your boys took the hell of a beating.
Welcome to 1979-80 Revisited, paragraph 3 of subsection 1.09 that we're up to. It's still the Saturday the 17th of November. And having dealt with all things Kevin Keegan and the First Division, we're having a look at the Second Division now. The big match has sent their cameras for the feature match to Stamford Bridge and the visit of Charlton Athletic. Dave, a London derby. You know, we were always told that the London clubs could not prosper in the league because of so many London derbies. But really, West London to the south of London, you know, I'd have to Google it, but the distance between the valley, a decrepit valley at this point in time, and you know, Stamford Bridge and its patchwork quilt of a stadium is probably further apart than, maybe as far apart as say, the Manchester clubs and Leeds.
Well, certainly with the traffic, trying to get across London, I think it'd probably take you forever to get to. You could probably go from from Manchester to Newcastle in roughly the same time as you get from Stamford Bridge to the Valley. So, I think in London it's more localised than that, isn't it? It's Arsenal, Tottenham, and that kind of thing. I think it's enmities between clubs for age-old reasons that have gone on forever. I can't imagine that Chelsea and Charlton were getting that worked up about this particular. Certainly not the Chelsea fans, I wouldn't have thought.
No, not at all. I was always kind of like a bit suspicious of that concept of, we can't possibly win the league because we've got 12 London derbies across the course of the season. It's like, I'm not having this, lads. I'm not having this. Again, no, a great, Brian Moore on commentary for this one. He describes this as a clash between two new young managers to the London scene, Dave. It's Geoff Hurst versus Mike Bailey. Mike Bailey's recently taken the Charlton job, having moved from Hereford United. Geoff Hurst dropped into the club into Chelsea in the summer to be assistant to Danny Blanchflower. Blanchflower departs under a cloud, shall we say. And suddenly Geoff Hurst is the Chelsea manager. But he seems to be doing quite well at this point in time.
They're doing all right, aren't they, Chelsea? They're up in the upper reaches of the league, going quite nicely. He's just brought in Bobby Gould as his assistant. No good can come of this, surely. I wouldn't have thought they were necessarily on the same page in terms of the football that they wanted to play. But anyway, we shall see. Black mark on Geoff Hurst. Ron Harris is wearing the number 11 shirt. This
is an oddity. This is an oddity. It's a jarring oddity. Deployed in midfield as well, from what I can see in this as well. It should be said that Bobby Gould had been Mike Bailey's assistant up until a few weeks earlier at Hereford. Interestingly, didn't follow him to Charlton. Instead kind of like deviates towards Stamford Bridge, goes West London rather than southeast. Yeah, the two teams, Chelsea, Peter Barota, the Yugoslavian goalkeeper, who is quite the character. We'll get into Peter Barota's performance as we go along in this one. Gary Locke, John Sparrow, who has a very, very interesting afternoon. John Bumstead, Mickey Joy, Gary Chivers, Ian Britton, Mike Fillery, Lee Frost, Clive Walker, Ron Harris, as said, in the number 11 shirt. The substitute is Tommy Langley. For Charlton, it's Nicky Johns, who will come to Brian Moore's categorisation of just what Nicky Johns is as we go along. There's an intriguing bit of commentary that refers to him as an item of the sea, shall we say, that might be for breakfast for some people at this era. Tony Hazel, David Campbell, Dick Tideman, Les Berry, Laurie Madden, Colin Powell, not Colin Powell, the American. What was his role in the various Bush administrations? Richard Wilson. We could go for a bit of a Victor Meldrew, I don't believe it theme here. There's also the wonderful Derek Hales, who he's channeling some fine Spinal Tap vibes on this particular afternoon, Dave. He's joined by Phil Walker and Steve Gritt, future co-Charlton manager Peter Shaw is Charlton's substitute. Dave, the lineups. There's plenty of familiar names and a few unfamiliar ones as well.
We discussed Dennis Mortimer's beard in the previous paragraph, but we can't ignore Derek Hales' beard. It wasn't like a W.G. Grace. I mean, it was never a huge beard, but it seemed to take over his entire face, and there was something very aggressive about Derek Hales' beard. It was like a Brillo pad or something, but his eyes seemed to submerge into this mop of hair, and then the beard, and there was, you could see him on a wanted poster in a Clint Eastwood movie or something. That was how Derek Hales looked. But as you say, there's some decent players in this who played at a higher level, and others who would sort of come through. And then, as you say, we'll come to Peter Barota in particular a little later on.
In terms of changes, Hales is in for the first time in 2 months. He injured Martin Robinson has dropped out, so it's only a half fit Derek Hales for this one. For Chelsea, it's an unchanged side. They've recently put, a week earlier, they put 7 past Orient, as we previously mentioned, and in midweek they've beaten West Ham. On a fine run of results here, Dave. Our referee is Mr. David Harrison from Bourne in Cambridge, who has an interesting. We'll come to his interesting position that he puts himself in after awarding the first penalty of the day. Brian Moore will say that he's never seen anything quite like it as far as a referee reaction to a penalty. I've never. We have to mention it now. He kind of hides behind the goal. He takes himself away from the rancor of argument, and it's like he's hiding behind the goal as if it's kind of like, well, no one can see me here, except of course you can see him through the netting. It's
a very peculiar. I mean, it is a very dubious penalty. We have to give him that. We'll come on to the circumstances later on, but the Charlton players are not happy, as you can imagine. They pursue him, and he disappears behind the goal and waves everybody away. I mean, he's sort of standing. Of course, Stamford Bridge has got this big space behind the goal to where the stands are, so he's kind of marooned in between. And yet there's a bunch of Invicars on the corner. Surely, if he was going to hide, he should have got into one of them or underneath it or something. But to be fair to the Charlton players, they do all walk away from him. So there's obviously some sort of invisible force field that exists behind the Stamford Bridge goal.
Yeah, maybe thinking they'll get a yellow card for leaving the pitch without permission or something like that. That might have been the context here. First half is it's a waste ground, really. It's interesting that the big match give us around about 26 minutes of footage for this, yet 3 minutes for the first half and like more than 23 minutes for the second half. No away wins so far this season for Charlton. Chelsea are 2 points off the leaders going into this game. As mentioned, it's been a promising start for Geoff Hurst, manager. Mickey Joy strikes the image of an absolute monster as well in this, in the preamble to the match. He's 6'4" and 15 stone. In a team that's got Ron Chopper Harris as well. This is peak thuggery when it comes to the Chelsea way, shall we say?
There are a couple of glorious minutes where one follows the other. There's Hales against Droy coming together, and then a few seconds later, Ron Harris and Kevin Wilson are involved in this magnificent tackle in midfield where the pair of them, I mean, it's like stock car racing. They just absolutely throw themselves into it, both 2-footed, off the ground. Everything's going on. And we just carry on. No problem. Carry on with the game.
Play on.
All fine.
Play on. Absolute play on. And the referee has a very much a play on course of action for a clash of heads between Powell and Sparrow, which is absolutely spectacular. Brian Moore's even surprised by the size of the lump on Sparrow's head for this one. It's very much kind of like the referee. Initially, it's just get up and play on.
Yeah, there's no thought of a concussion substitute or it's a head injury. We must stop the play now. None of that. The pair of them are just writhing around on the floor, and Gary Sparrow finally gets up and Brian Moore. Look at the size of that. and appropriately enough, with Gary Sparrow, which looks like a bird's egg on his forehead. It's absolutely huge, and he just carries on. There's no. Get on with it.
He does. He does. He carries on, but it's clearly got to be one of those where he's not going to remember a single thing of the remainder of that afternoon. And within that, he's probably, from a Chelsea perspective, in the best position because Tideman then beats Barotta at his near post to open the scoring for Charlton in a first half that, in his post-match interview, Hurst will declare as Chelsea just threw out the window. There's nothing of attacking endeavour at all for Chelsea. And Brian Moore, at the end of the first half, he describes it as an undistinguished first half and that Charlton was strong but unimpressive.
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know what that means. I mean,
it's an interesting summing up that he did, yeah.
I don't know how you can be strong and unimpressive at the same time. That's damning Chelsea with faint praise, isn't it? I mean, it's not about the goal in terms of the build-up. I mean, it's a nice pass from Powell into the box, takes out a couple of defenders, and Tideman's onto it and lashes this shot from a tight angle through Barotta, who his positioning is not the best. The Big Match have employed this behind the goal camera for the replays for this game, which frankly tells you absolutely nothing, because it is, when I say behind the goal, it's behind the goal. It's literally virtually in the net, and it shows you absolutely nothing. What it does show you is Stamford Bridge looking very forlorn. I mean, it's you see it right the way to the far end of the ground, and it's empty. There's a scoreboard of sorts with a line of about 25 policemen standing underneath it. Empty terraces everywhere, and then you've got this Stamford Bridge in the middle of redevelopment. The one immense giant stand. You've got uncovered terraces. You've got half a stand that's been built. It's an absolute dog's breakfast of a football ground at that point.
I mean, the size of that main stand is nearly as big as the lump on Sparrow's head. And Sparrow is soon quite further replaced by Langley. It doesn't take long after the goal's conceded for Chelsea to say, hang on, come on, you're gonna have to. Well, let's get you off the pitch and down to the dressing room.
It doesn't take long to get him off, but it takes ages for Tommy Langley to get off.
He can't get his tracksuit off.
Out of his tracksuit. It's like Red Bull changing four wheels. It's everybody suddenly all hands to the pub trying to get him out of his tracksuit.
It's great because he's got these tracksuit bottoms on that he can't get across his boots, and he's trying to get his tracksuit top off while the trainer and the coach kind of like trying to drag the tracksuit bottoms off. Chelsea down to 10 men, 1-0 down, and that wall of police protection for the electronic scoreboard it's a heavy police protection for the electronic scoreboard, Dave. That is one of the most wondrous sights, and like you say, no shortage of Invicars in attendance on this particular afternoon down at Stamford Bridge.
It was such a big. I mean, it was almost such a strange game with those huge gaps behind the goals to the stand as well. I mean, obviously that's all changed now when they finished the redevelopment of it and all of that. But I mean, it does look that tired old, like so many of them were at that point, in the 70s and the 80s, sort of falling down football ground that's desperately in need of reworking and rethinking. But I mean, all those policemen protecting the scoreboard, and there's nobody in front of them because they obviously haven't opened that terrace anyway. So I don't know who they think it is. Perhaps it's from a wayward free kick from Mickey Droy or something. I don't know.
It is quite a spectacular sight. The second half kind of like largely begins where the first half ended. Yet it soon goes a bit nuts for Chelsea. There's this it's like a shot or a back. Nicky Johns comes back into the game, and this is where Brian Moore kind of loses the plot. I don't know if his attention's slipping because it's been such a relatively poor game, the goal side, and the second half has suddenly started in the same fashion, basically. He declares that Nicky Johns is a kipper, which is the ball is picked up by the kipper, and then he kind of like corrects himself and calls him the skipper, and then it's like, or rather the keeper, and then he kind of like tries to brush past it as if it's never happened. This having in the last paragraph talked about the virtues of the intriguing esoteric virtues of Hugh Johns. This isn't Brian Moore's finest moment in declaring that Nicky Johns is a kipper.
Yes, seconds after it's been a strong, if unimpressive, performance, he's a kipper. He could possibly be foreshadowing the interview with Mike Bailey the following day, who was wearing an extravagant tie, shall we say, in the studio.
Maybe you see Mike Bailey in the tunnel before the game and just being struck by the.
It is unquestionably a kipper tie. It's extravagant beyond belief.
It really is.
Happened really. It's. I don't know where it's from.
It's great that even the London Weekend Television editors decide to keep it in as well. There's no real reason for it to stay in. You just get the vibe that's really tickled the editor there, and he's thought that's got to stay in. That's just brilliant. Then comes the after Kippergate comes the sliding doors moment, Dave. Charlton break forward. Madden with this long, unchallenged run from within his own half, strikes the post. He hits the post. He's got Barota beating all ends up. I'm not sure he actually meant it. It seems to hit it with the outside of his right foot in an era in which that didn't happen very often in English football. People hitting the ball with the outside of the foot rather than the instep or the inside of the foot. 2-0 would surely have finished it at this point. Still early in the first, early enough in the second half for Chelsea to have made a fight back. But given how insipid their performance has been for 47, 48, 49 minutes, a second goal at this point would have left Chelsea a lot to come back from.
I mean, if this goes in, it's goal of the decade, really. I mean, to be fair to Laurie Madden, he wins the ball initially. He plays a sort of a 1-2. I'm being a bit generous, perhaps. One of his players picks the ball and it's got to be 60, 70 yards that he's run from his own half to the edge of the Chelsea area. And as you say, this weird sort of stab with the outside of the foot, a little flick, really, from 25 yards past Barota, who is completely bemused by the whole thing. It thumps against the post, then whizzes past Barota again, who's looking in every possible direction. No idea what's going on. Chelsea get away with it, and then, within a couple of minutes, they're up the other end, and the game's back in the balance, one apiece.
Chelsea at this point, I mean, there'd been a huge. We mentioned it a fair few, subsection modules, paragraphs back about how Geoff Hurst had taken over and immediately put about 9 players on the transfer list, released Peter Osgood. He's had no real option but to delve into the youth ranks, and he's doing pretty well at this point in time. Yeah, it has to be said. He's got this Chelsea side challenging for promotion, where they probably have no real right to do so. They're on this cracking run. Mike Fillery, 18, John Bumstead, another teenager that's in this side as well. These are players that will sustain Chelsea during some dark days to come before, brighter times, in football in terms at least, appear on the horizon, although be it, we're a few seasons away from that. But this is an intriguing season for Chelsea because, we'll not go too far in advance, but they don't get promoted, but only by a narrow margin. At this point in time, it does offer that kind of like tantalising kind of like, a Hurst-powered Chelsea return to the first division for the following season. What Chelsea's first half of the 1980s might have ended up turning. But at this point in time, this is going to be 10 incredible minutes that Chelsea put in within a game in which they are quite abject. Mike Fillery equalises out of nowhere. It's a cross from Walker. John's the Charlton kipper has very little chance at point blank range. Fillery turns back to goal. It's 1-1, and suddenly it's like a light switch for 10 minutes. And Clive Walker's a world beater all of a sudden, which he could be at times. It's an incredible kind of like turn of events across this next 10 minutes.
If you think back to the previous season, 78-9, Chelsea were genuinely terrible that season. I mean, they could barely win a game, barely win a point. I mean, they were properly relegated the previous season.
And then there's the loss of Ray Wilkins in the summer.
Yeah. So, things could have gone really, really badly for Chelsea at this point. And Geoff Hurst does a decent job for them, to be fair, over this period. And as you say, had he got them promoted, the World Cup winners famously didn't produce many great managers. I mean, Jack Charlton did okay, and that was pretty much it, really. But Geoff Hurst might have gone on and been a successful manager had that happened, rather than going and selling insurance, I think, which is what he ended up doing. But for 10 minutes, it's a completely different world. I mean, as you say, Clive Walker, his turn is sort of switched on. They've put the money in the slot for about 10 minutes, and he's that typical mercurial winger who's taking everybody to pieces. Charlton can't cope with him, and then he disappears again. After that, having done his job really to get him to 3-1, but the goal from Filler is the turning point, and then 2 penalties. We've mentioned the first one, very dubious, but I don't think they're even giving that handball now. Never mind, in 1979.
No.
And Nicky Johns comes out and stands on the edge of the 6-yard box. He does this for both penalties. Stands on the edge of the 6-yard box for ages, refusing to allow it to be taken. Then eventually goes back and manages to miss it twice when Britain has put the ball into exactly the same spot. So not the greatest afternoon for the famous kipper. Done up like a kipper, indeed.
Done up like a kipper, indeed he was. I mean, the first one he concedes, he takes the kind of like, he doesn't even dive.
No.
And he takes his stance kind of like, it's modelled on kind of like the crouching Subutio goalkeeper mode. You always have that kind of the outstretched goalkeeper, the crouched down goalkeeper. It must be a penalty specific Subutio goalkeeper, and he say that's his tactic for the first goal, which makes the goal a bigger target, and he just doesn't even bother diving.
In fact, had the referee stayed behind the goal, he could have put him on the bar and moved him around.
Absolutely. Oh, just utter gold. But yeah, Britain, with the two penalties, that first from 1-0 down, suddenly it's kind of like 5 minutes between the equaliser and the penalty that's highly disputed. Then Langley, Chelsea, even before the second penalty, Langley almost makes it 3-1. Back post header that's cleared for the corner. But then, like I say, the second penalty is clear as anything. Richard Wilson, Victor Meldrew, whatever you want to call him. You've got Mike Bailey on the bench. Just can't believe it. It's got everything going for it. And like you say, Britain puts the second penalty in exactly the same spot, although Johns does go the right dive the right way this time. Ball's out of reach. From the 50th minute to the 60th minute, Charlton they just completely check out of this game.
And then Chelsea do after that. I mean, Geoff Hurst not best pleased in his post-match interview. We played for 10 minutes and that was it. We stopped playing again after the goals. At 3-1, I mean, the game was pretty much done at that stage. And as you say, they're on a fantastic run. They're beating West Ham in midweek, beating Orient. They're right up there in amongst the pace setters, which, given where they started the season, the first day of the season, I mean, they would have been absolutely thrilled with that, I would have thought, with all that was going on at Stamford Bridge. Of course, they do owe plenty to Peter Barota and an extravagant save.
The one very much for this is exactly what I've written in my note here. It was very much, and then he kind of like turns on the eccentric style, shall we say? He's out of his penalty area, trying to weigh in, kind of like tackles in defensive midfield positions. He's again on the edge of his box, having to stick his head on a through ball. A lot of bravery there because he does stoop down into it. But yeah, that save for the cameras, it's going wide. Yeah, he does that kind of like pluck it out the air, tumble to the ground kind of save, quick up on his feet to try and throw it out, and it's got kind of like, I know the cameras are here. The family back home will see this at some point. Is your lad in action? Yeah, but beyond that,
I've always thought of him sort of subsequently as kind of the idiot's Bruce Grobbelaar. He's got very much that sort of crowd-pleasing Grobbelaar thing about him. Grobbelaar was a good goalkeeper. I'm not suggesting that Peter Barota wasn't a good goalkeeper, but he wasn't in Grobbelaar's class, obviously.
Yeah, there was definitely an eccentricity at play, but no sign of a cap that had the kind of like the budgie or whatever it was on it that Grobbelaar would eventually sport. But yeah, a great deal of entertainment for Peter Barota. The game peters out to this 3-1 win, and yeah, we get the great after-match interviews, and Hurst isn't happy with the overall performance. We played for 10 minutes. There's a great moment where Mike Bailey steps in and says, "No, I don't agree with that as far as the first half's concerned." He's very much of the mind that they nullified Chelsea, which plays into Brian Moore's earlier comment about solidly unimpressive. It's great. It's kind of precursor to that great comment of that great catchphrase of in the ratings the newspapers would do. Often kind of like the tabloids would go for, if a player had done nothing throughout a game of interest but had not made a mistake. They were classed as 6 out of 10 solid if unspectacular, a coverall kind of like rating. This is Brian Moore bringing that type of concept to the fore, I think. Yeah, Bailey rightly questions that first penalty. But for Chelsea, it's now 8 wins out of 10. And this win, combined to other results, which we'll come to in a minute, puts them into the top 3, just 1 point off the lead. Yeah, really peculiar from Chelsea. Everything is kind of, it's all set for kind of dysfunction in this season, but suddenly Christmas is on the horizon, and it's kind of like, you're looking at them thinking, here's a team that could well bounce straight back up.
They're in good position for it, scoring goals, home and away. Enough good players in that team. I mean, although I've just openly insulted Peter Brota, I mean, he was a decent enough goalkeeper. Clive Walker, if you could get enough out of him, was going to create things. Yeah. Ron Harris was still there as the midfield playmaker. It is a gloriously peculiar game, this for Telegram. It's like Brian Moore's psychedelic weekend or something. It's a very odd. It's of the moment, I think. It's the kind of way to describe it, but it's you don't get that kind of randomness.
That's exactly what it is. It's an utterly random game of football that just kind of like makes very little sense, but comes to a satisfying conclusion with a kipper of a goalkeeper thrown in for good measure. Invicars aplenty.
Yeah.
The mad layout of that era's Stamford Bridge. It had very little going for it, but so much going for it.
Absolutely, Dave. Yeah. It's a strong, if unimpressive performance, all right.
Interestingly, Chelsea players are earning quite well at this point in time. They're on £60 a point pay structure, Dave. So we can see where this determination is coming from.
Over 1,200 quid so far this season, blimey.
Yeah, doing pretty well for themselves. Fillery, it's his 7th goal of the season. For a teenager, who's basically being asked to replace Ray Wilkins, it's pretty good for a player that would, serve many, a handful of clubs very, very well throughout the decade. And Everton are impressed enough to have sent scouts to watch him in this game. So, there's potential for Chelsea to kind of like coin it in on him. Shall we say it was Newcastle being held to a draw at Bristol Rovers that allowed Chelsea into the top 3. Wins for Fulham and Watford at the other end meant that Charlton slipped into the relegation zone, Dave. Intriguing juxtaposition of what was going on there for each club. Other results in the second division. As mentioned, Newcastle with a 1-1 draw at Bristol Rovers. Burnley still awaiting their first win of the season in the league, Dave, but they have held top of the table Luton Town to a goalless draw at Turf Moor. Cambridge United 2-0 winners at home to Wrexham. It's a goalless draw between Cardiff and Orient. As we've talked about extensively there, Chelsea's 3-1 win against Charlton. Fulham 1-0 winners at Oldham Athletic. Preston and Leicester City share a 1-1 draw. Gary Lineker with a late equaliser. QPR 2-1 winners at home to Shrewsbury. Glenn Roeder scoring an injury time winner. Sunderland 3-1 winners at home to Notts County. Watford's mentioned earlier on there, 1-0 win against Birmingham. West Ham a 2-0 win against John Toshak's Swansea City. Second half goals from Brooking and Cross. It all leaves Luton still top of the table, 22 points, 1 ahead of QPR, Chelsea, Newcastle. You've got Leicester and Birmingham on 20, so only 2 points split in the top 6. Towards the bottom, Burnley anchored to the bottom despite their impressive points at home to top of the table, Luton. It's Shrewsbury on 11, Charlton on 12, also on 12 but outside of the bottom 3 now, Fulham, Watford, Bristol Rovers, Cambridge United. On 14 points, you've got Orient and Oldham. So 3 points separating 23rd all the way up to Oldham in something like 15th, 14th to 15th, third day. No playoffs, but we're way past the third mark of the season. Very few teams thus far who are moving to that situation of nothing to play for as such.
That was always a great thing about that division, and still is, to be fair. I mean, it's always such a congested league, the second tier, the Championship, the second division, whatever. Guys, it's gone under over the years, but I mean that lot sort of logjam at the top of the division, 2 points separating 6 teams. I mean, that speaks for the great second half of the season, with just the 3 going up, no playoffs to play for. It's going to be a ruthless second half of the season.
It absolutely is. A quick nod to the 3rd and 4th divisions. Millwall lead the way in Division 3. Sheffield United and Colchester also in the promotion places. Brentford, Swindon, Sheffield Wednesday, Chester, all within reaching distance. Wimbledon anchored to the bottom of the 3rd. Bury, Southend and Plymouth making up the bottom 4. A 3-point detachment from Exeter, Blackpool and Mansfield Town. In the 4th division, we've got Huddersfield top of the table on 30 points. Portsmouth, Bradford and Walsall also in the top 4. Newport County and Torquay, along with Doncaster, all within reaching distance. The bottom 4, and Crewe are looking nailed on for having to seek re-election. 9 points. They are 7 adrift, or 6 adrift of Darlington in 20th place. Also in the bottom 3, Rochdale, Scunthorpe and Port Vale. Usual suspects, Dave, looking likely to need to seek re-election.
They'll have booked their hotel for the day out at the Café Royal.
The Café Royal.
Come the end of May next year. They'll be sending the bribes around to the expensively tailored pens around to their colleagues in the 4th division.
Absolutely, they will. Absolutely. Back page headlines with regards to the 2nd division. The Millwall manager George Petchey has told Tampa Bay Rowdies to put their £1 million bid for Tony Kinsella, Kevin O'Callaghan and David Mamet in writing after having received a verbal bid from Tampa's European representative, certain Ted Buxton, who would be part of the England setup. Intriguing times there at the Den, if somewhat unsettling. Within the week, the Tampa coach, former Millwall manager Gordon Diego himself, he's kind of like downplaying this move. It seems that Buxton's got ahead of himself, according to Tampa. The general manager Charles Seredensky is particularly in backpedaling mode from this prospective outlay of £1 million of Vancouver's cash, because obviously the NASL is on stable, very, very stable ground, Dave, at this point in time. Frank Lord has been appointed as the new Hereford United manager in succession of Mike Bailey, and Sunderland pay a club record £300,000 for Middlesbrough's Stan Cummings at a diminutive 5'4". Cummings scores on his debut for Sunderland. Cash-strapped Bristol Rovers, they receive a £250,000 bid from Luton Town for striker Steve White. Bobby Campbell is not interested at that point, even though everyone knows they need big money to pay for the leasing of the ground. Wrexham manager Arthur Griffiths is open to selling Steve Fox and David Giles after a training ground row with the pair. Must have been a heated one, that, Dave.
Absolutely.
Straight on the transfer list they go.
Arthur Griffiths, one of the great names from that period of time. And Wrexham were having their glory years that will never come again. Yeah, I mean, the NASL, I mean, it seems ridiculous now when you know what happened, but it did seem like it was going to be a threat, didn't it? It was going to take all our players away, and it was going to change the nature of football and everything. And 2 years later, 3 years later, the whole thing's imploded and gone. It's amazing. Truly,
truly was. We'll surely do a module on the NASL itself, the dying days of, at the very least. Thank you for joining us for paragraph 3 of 1979-80 Revisited, subsection module 1.09. Subsection 1.010, we've elapsed ourselves there. Will take us to Saturday the 24th of November. Please do join us for that. Also subscribe. Hang on, I think Romark's going to kick in as well. The chimes of doom have kicking it. The NASL, he knows. Romark knows, and Romark as well, as we have seen, had a television series on American TV, Dave, that we've not discussed enough of the throne of the tennis. The tennis ball and the You've Never Met Me Before, and Romark finishes work here. There we go. From ourselves, from me, from Dave Bowler, from Romark. Join us again next time. Please do subscribe as well. Your boys took a hell of a beating as the umbrella of all this nonsense comes under. Thank you and goodbye.